of creating the upper body controls. I just have to do the neck, here. You could have it be, where do I want the neck to rotate is really what you want to ask yourself. So I'm going to leave this one here, and I'm only probably going to rotate it from this point here. And if you try to bend your neck, you can't get, I'm not going to have 3 neck controls. You can, we have so many more vertebrates in our spine, but this should be fine for what I need it for. The other thing is I'll duplicate this, and we can get one more controller on the head section here. And there we go. And what I'm going to do at this point is I have it snapped to my joint here. I'm going to do Shift I, and I'm going to manipulate this controller to sort of just shape out the head. And this is just a personal preference of mine. You can create any kind of controllers you want once you get the hang of it, obviously. Something like so. One thing that's always good to keep in mind is when you're animating, you're creating this for animation, not just to look good. So you want to make sure that it's easy to select. And that's always an important feature about creating a rig. Is this easy to select? My general experience with rigs and animating, one of my biggest pet peeves are those tiny little controllers around the fingers. They're so difficult to grab. It takes me forever sometimes to just wrap around these little fingers and make sure I get the correct zoom and everything to be able to just select those controllers, which is why I go about creating a hand control basically separate. So what I'll do is, instead of having all those individual controllers around the hand and the fingers, because it can be extremely difficult to select, I will create one controller that will control all the joints, sort of like the foot controller controls the ball joint, the heel joints, and all those. I sort of create a similar controller just for the hand and fingers. So I do it using the text. So create text, change it to F, and curves is fine, but just so you're aware, you can create it as poly or any of these other settings. Go ahead and hit create, and then by default it is grouped. So what I like to do is do an ungroup first. You'll notice it'll snap back because now it's no longer in a group. And I will grab the finger control now and simply just move it right above. And I use F for fingers. That's where I got that from. So now simply just rotate it how I want it to look and where I want it, and that's pretty good. So that'll be my finger control. I'll do a modify freeze transformations, hold D and X, snap this to my center grid point, Command D, scale -1, and modify freeze transformations again, rename our finger CTRL, and this one will be L finger CTRL. Go ahead now and also freeze transformations on the neck control, neck CTRL. Modify freeze transformations on the head control, head CTRL. And we're going to create one last controller, and I'm going to create a NURB circle, and this will be the controller for the eyes. So here, what I'm going to do is simply snap this directly to the center of the eye and scale it slightly smaller, and then bring out in my side viewport. And then the other part is I'm going to duplicate this so I can do a Command D. The easier way to do it at this point to keep everything correct and basically perfectly symmetrical at this point for the rig, you want to center your pivot point, freeze transformations, duplicate, scale, -1, okay, and then modify freeze transformations, same thing here, rename, this will be LICTRL, this will be RICTRL, and I'm going to create, modify center pivot in this case because we're going to need it to animate from and control from the center point of that and not from the 0 point on the x-axis on the right here on your grid. So one more I like to create is the eye control for both eyes, so I'll have individual controllers as well as a dual eye control basically. And what I'll do is sort of like the edge loops on creating the face, I kind of just create this little robin mask. To wrap around the eyes, the eye controllers. So we end up with something similar to this here. So that's pretty good. And now I've got my eye controller, or whatever you want to call it, and modify freeze transformations. And the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drag these out to be approximately the same distance as our knee controllers. And last thing, freeze transformations. So now we have a setup that will look like something like this here. And that is the second part of setting up the upper body, or creating the upper body controls. Next we'll be connecting all of the controllers, and that'll probably be about a two-parter as well. So thanks for watching.